So how about this? What would you say are the 2 or 3 top misnomers in the old-fashioned economic development thing? One is, to you, lower taxes are going to save the world.
Trickle down economics.
Right.
All ones are all rising tides, rise all the boats, all that crap that you know.
I think that used to be true when we were a middle-class based country. And my mom had the income disparity chart on our playroom in the 60s. She was already pissed. It was 7 to 1. And it was a brownstone, so that chart would be off, out of the roof at this point. So a lot of the things that we think about from economic development, to me, we came by them, honestly. They used to work. And it's just a very slow system to change. So what are the tools that you feel, in your way of thinking, should be more considered by the professionals that are actually wrestling with this thing, trying to help some people?
Pay much more attention to ecological healing. I mean, we do a much better job of that. And this is, again, one of those myths that the business climate folks, that regulation hurts the economy. You guys have probably seen those statistics too. But the fact is that ecological healing is critical. Climate, probably takes precedence over almost everything for the next 50 years. Because if we don't do what we really need to do on climate, which is essentially eliminate all fossil fuel use, we are going to be in big trouble. The storms that hit this year are going to hit more and more frequently. Not more hurricanes. The data doesn't say more hurricanes. It says the ones that hit will be more powerful, and that's what we're seeing. Is they're more powerful, and then the heat waves. I mean, Toronto was, 92 the other day? Forests, I spent a lot of time in my life in forests, and a lot of my research was about animals that live in forests and people who live in forests. And we have to do a much better job to restore the global forest. And that's going to be a really hard one, partly because we haven't yet figured out how to build cities without stealing more forests. And, the stealing of those forests, what happens also is it's usually a tantamount to genocide for the people who live in the forests. In places like the United States, no. But in places like the Amazon, places like Southeast Asia, the stealing of the forests is still going on. And the people who live in those forests either end up in shanty towns or they end up dead. And the ones who stand up end up dead. What was there? Another massacre 3 weeks ago in the Amazon so they could steal more forests. And between the role of forests for the livelihood of 1 billion people, there's 1 billion people on the planet who still make a good deal of their daily bread in forests. And, the poorest people are often them. But what you find is that the poorest people, if they have enough forest, don't feel poor. It's when they don't have enough forest that they feel poor, because they don't have the resources. They don't have enough place for bees. There's not enough fruit trees, or places where the water is in the years of drought. It's kind of like the elephants, if the elephants lose the old matriarchs and they can't find the water in the year of the drought, they're in big trouble. And that's what's happening to people all over the planet, on grasslands and forests. And that's the places those are the people who both are the spiritual future core of our planet, with their understanding of the ecosystems. And they're the protection of the last of the biodiversity and the last of the forest that will help us, meet all of our future challenges. We just can't do it without forests. And the story of civilization is 10,000 years of destroying forests. So until we start to, we're fighting right now about menhaden. Are you familiar with menhaden at all? They are the most numerous kind of fish in this part of the North Atlantic. And they're oily and they're bony, and everything pretty much except humans eats them. So if you catch all of them, then there's no osprey and there's no seals.
Are these bunker or scuff or
bunker.
bunker?
And the big ones get to be about this big, and if you go in a wooded shoreline where you're along an estuary right now, you will find half-eaten menhaden everywhere, because that's what the osprey were eating. They're about heading south right now, but there's places just littered with dead menhaden. But that's when they fledge their young, is when the menhaden come to town. Because the menhaden are down in the bay, and they come up this far in the bay later in the season, like August, and that's when the osprey fledge. And the scientists say that we wouldn't have osprey if we didn't have menhaden. And so some of that reflects on our tourism and our ecotourism, and then all the quality of life indexes. But I mean, the ecological
wait.
healing.
I have a question. This is just, I do have an opinion that might speak out from time. This
That'd be
tourism-
all right.
Are we allowed to curse here? Like, what the heck is tourism? We're gonna spend $1 gazillion to fight other cool places, to try to bring people here, to spend money in restaurants, which is all going somewhere else because that's where the food came from. So the streets are crowded. I just don't get tourism. I don't get why we need to prostitute ourselves. Why don't we just stay here in this beautiful state and enjoy ourselves and stop begging people? Like in your house, you don't beg people to come for dinner. You don't think people coming for dinner makes you money. Like the whole thing to me is completely insane. And it's what the government spends so much money on, because then they can show that they, quote, did something. And we didn't talk about this, so maybe he loves tourism. What do you think about tourism? It's a little risky. Drives
I
people-
love to go to the beach.
That's not tourism.
No,
That's
it's
Thoreau.
That could be. But and human beings
What do
need
you
to
think
go
of
to
tourism as an economic development where a state spends a ton of money on attracting other people to stay, while the
Okay.
state next door is spending money on attracting us them, and it's a bunch of people just all spending money on nothing.
Right, and it's mostly the people
Is
who
that the tourism commissioner?
have
It's just needed president.
I'm probably not as adamant against tourism, but I try not to fly anymore, partly because of my carbon footprint, partly because I think the TSA is a criminal organization. I think they're a part of the national insecurity state. So, so I travel less, and I don't have a passport because there are only 2 places in America where you don't have any rights: airports and borders. So I don't cross the border. I don't have a passport, and since I don't really want to fly, it's all right. If I really need to go to Canada, I can probably find some wilderness that I can cross over. I've hitchhiked with people who were doing that. Find all the logging roads, but that was 40 years ago, before they had all the border surveillance. Tourism is problematic in that it's mostly low-paid jobs, and it really does strange things to communities. I mean, they become all about restaurants, and when you're all about restaurants, you have a lot of food waste, and you wonder about that. But people should see the world. People need to get out of their own way and get out of their own habits and do some kind of travel at some point, just to see the world differently. And so, can you make it easier for them? Is it something that we should promote a lot? Probably not. We probably do too much of it. But, it's like, what are we going to do as our industrial base collapses? Because our industrial base essentially, collapsed and is never coming back. And we've got robotics. The only way you can avoid tourism as a way to keep some people employed is to do something like universal basic income, which, we would probably really need anyway, because then we wouldn't be thinking about doing some of the strange things we do to get growth.
So what is universal basic income?
Everybody gets a check every month from the government for enough to get by.
Enough to get by is an interesting question.
Right, it is. It's a very interesting question, and the thing is that comes back to the whole issue of what's economic growth, and do we want it, and is it useful, and should we be chasing it? Because if you never have enough, you're always going to chase more.
Do you know what enough? I'm building a simple house. next to my real house. And I'm building it myself, and I'm obsessed with the idea of what is enough and how do we live more simply. And so all the ads say, fly to Aspen, you'll get the girl and you'll be happy. Well, it sucks. I don't fit. Someone else is driving. It's a lot of money. It's never fulfilling. So I feel like the marketing and back on tourism is taking me personally away from the things that increase my well-being, my health, my satisfaction. So when I say what is enough, we're going to open the Simplicity Center and we're going to study, since if you Google simplicity, all we get is Walden. Like it's 150 years of studying more to become happier, not less. And so that's why I asked that. Does anybody know of any place or any writings